Busted my pregnant wife's brother stealing my data, all because her mom said I'd cheat if she got too fat. Hey folks, so I'm a 27-year-old guy, and for the past 3 weeks, I've been living with my in-laws. My wife, who's 25, and I have been married for 3 years, and she's now 8 months pregnant. Since she's on maternity leave and I still have to work, she didn't want to be home alone all day. She asked if her family could move in for a while to help out, and even though I wasn't thrilled about the idea, I agreed because I understood she needed support. At first, she mentioned having her family stay with us until the baby arrived. I wasn't exactly comfortable with that plan, so I tried suggesting she just invite her mom instead. Now, I'm not a fan of her mother, never have been, but she's still my wife's mom, and for her sake, I figured I could tolerate it for a little while. But my wife was set on having her whole family around. She said it would help her feel more at ease during the final stretch of pregnancy, so eventually, I gave in. 3 weeks ago, her parents, her 22-year-old brother, and her 18-year-old sister all moved into our home. Now, I should mention, we're living in the house my parents used to own. They were kind enough to let us live here after we got married. These days, they've moved out to the edge of town to stay with my uncle and run a small B&B, since they're retired now. Once my in-laws settled in, things got complicated fast. My wife took over our bedroom completely, and her mom decided she'd sleep there too because of some back problems she has. Her dad mostly stays in the guest room, her sister crashes on the pull-out couch, and her brother sleeps on a mattress on the living room floor. With that setup, I got pushed into my old childhood bedroom, and I was not happy about it at all. I really wanted to be there for my wife when she went into labor. Her OB/GYN says it could happen any day now. But instead, it's her mother who'll be right there with her, and I'll admit, that stung. I felt pushed out of something that should have been between the two of us. My wife has always been really close to her family, and I get that. But I still felt like bringing the whole crew into our house was over the top. Still, I didn't argue. She was pregnant and emotional, and if having them around made her feel more secure, I wasn't about to be the one to take that away. That said, the past 3 weeks have been brutal for me. Her family isn't exactly easy to live with. Her siblings are lazy, they leave a mess everywhere and need constant reminders to clean up after themselves. And her mom? She's been nitpicking everything in the house. She constantly criticizes my parents' taste in furniture and decor, like she's on some kind of design crusade. That really ticked me off, considering my parents were generous enough to let us live here, fully furnished, without asking for a dime. In today's market, a house this size in this neighborhood would have cost us a fortune, especially one that was already furnished. The only person I didn't have a major issue with was my father-in-law. He kept to himself in the guest room and only came out for meals, which I appreciated. I'll be honest, I could tolerate her siblings and her dad just fine, but her mother made things really difficult. She was rude, constantly complaining, and just overall hard to deal with. Still, I tried to keep the peace. I stayed out of arguments, kept my mouth shut, and reminded myself this was what my wife wanted. That was the only reason I let them stay. I can't even count how many times I had to bite my tongue just to avoid starting drama. But 2 days ago, I hit my breaking point. Like usual, I left for work in the morning. My wife had a routine checkup, so she went out with her mom. Her sister, who's on winter break, had made plans with her friends that day. That left only her dad and brother at home. About 30 minutes into my commute, I realized I'd brought the wrong laptop. I had grabbed my wife's by mistake. Mine, which had all my work files, was still at home. I had no choice but to turn back. And honestly, I'm glad I did. When I got home, something felt off right away. The living room was empty, which was strange since one of her siblings was usually hanging around in there. But I didn't stop to think much about it and just headed straight to my room. That's where I found her brother. He was sitting there with his back to the door, using my laptop. He's really into tech, so the sight of him on my computer instantly set off alarm bells. I asked him what he was doing, but he refused to answer. Now, I'm not super tech savvy, so I couldn't immediately tell what he'd been up to. But I warned him either he tells me, or I call the cops. That seemed to get his attention, because he finally came clean. Turns out, he'd been copying everything from my laptop onto a flash drive. And not just that, he'd already done the same thing with my phone a few nights earlier while I was asleep. Apparently, my wife had paid him to do it. He said she swapped out my laptop that morning, hoping I wouldn't notice until the job was done. But lucky for me, I did. He claimed he didn't really want to go along with it and knew it was a messed up invasion of privacy, but the money convinced him. And just like that, I realized this had gone way beyond anything I could tolerate. When I found out what my wife had done, I was completely stunned. Thankfully, she got back from her doctor's appointment not long after I'd come home. The moment she stepped inside and saw the look on my face, and her brother's too, she knew she'd messed up. Without wasting a second, she pulled me into our room so we could talk in private. Her mother was standing in the corner, arms crossed, shooting daggers at her own son. That look alone told me she had something to do with all this, and sure enough, I was right. The first thing my wife did was apologize for going behind my back. Then she came clean. She admitted she'd asked her brother to copy everything from my laptop and phone because she wanted to spy on me. She said she needed to check if I was hiding anything or doing something shady. Hearing that hurt more than I can explain. I asked her why she'd think I'd do something like that. I've never given her a reason to doubt me. I've always been faithful, I love her, and I've never once even looked at another woman that way. I couldn't understand where this was coming from. At that point, I was already walking a tightrope emotionally. Her family had been pushing every button I had for the past 3 weeks, and this felt like the final straw. I lost my temper. I didn't scream, but my voice made it clear I was furious. And when she saw how angry I was, she just broke down in tears. I felt awful seeing her cry like that. The last thing I wanted was to make my pregnant wife sob, especially when she was already going through so much. I reached out and took her hands, trying to calm her down, and eventually, she explained the full story behind what had happened. Just like I suspected, it all traced back to her mother. For the past few weeks, ever since they moved in, her mom had been whispering poison in her ear. Every night, she'd tell my wife that men tend to cheat once their wives start getting too big during pregnancy. She kept pushing the idea that as soon as the baby was born, my wife needed to shed the weight fast, otherwise I'd lose interest and start looking elsewhere. According to her mother, my wife was already too big, even though she's 8 months pregnant and doing perfectly fine. Day after day, her mom kept hammering those thoughts into her head, telling her to eat less, worry about how she looks, and basically making her feel completely insecure. It made me sick to hear it. My wife, with all her hormones running wild and emotions on overdrive, ended up believing that maybe her mom was right. And in a moment of desperation, she paid her brother to dig through my personal stuff to see if I was cheating on her. She hadn't even looked through the files yet when I caught him. She told me all this between sobs, begging me not to leave her over it. Hearing her say that shattered me. Not only had she been so scared and insecure that she'd resorted to spying, but I also realized just how deep her mother's influence still ran. And sadly, I already knew some of it. Earlier in our relationship, she'd opened up to me about her body image struggles and the complicated history she had with food, all thanks to her mom. Her mother had been obsessed with controlling her weight ever since she was a kid. She believed that watching every bite my wife took would keep her from becoming, in her words, a fat cow. That's what she actually used to call her own daughter back when she was a teenager and had put on a bit of weight. It was heartbreaking. Her mom's constant pressure had triggered a full-blown eating disorder when she was younger. She was tall, curvy, and naturally more filled out than the other women in her family, who are all tiny and skinny. But instead of celebrating her body, her mom treated it like it was something shameful. Thankfully, during college, when my wife finally got some distance, she was able to rebuild a healthier relationship with food and exercise. She slimmed down, stayed active, and found a balance that worked for her. I truly thought she'd moved past all that and that things had improved between her and her mom. But clearly, I was wrong. Even now, with her pregnant and literally growing another human being, her mom was still pushing the same toxic nonsense, still obsessed with appearances, still convinced that weight equals worth. And apparently, the whole reason for their appointment that morning was because her mom thought she was overeating again and wanted the doctor to confirm she was too fat. It was unbelievable. My wife was a mess, sobbing and telling me how sorry she was, promising she'd lose the weight, begging me not to leave. She was hysterical, and I just couldn't let her spiral any further. So I wrapped my arms around her and told her the truth. I didn't give a damn about her weight. I love her for who she is, and all I want is for her to be happy and healthy. That seemed to settle her down a little. I asked her to stay in the room and try to rest, then I got up and walked out. I was done. I couldn't tolerate it any longer. I'd seen enough, heard enough, and there was no way in hell I was letting her mother stay under our roof a minute longer. I told them they had to leave. To their credit, her dad and brother didn't argue, they just quietly agreed to pack up. But, just like I expected, it was her mother who threw a fit. She flat out refused to go, claiming this was her daughter's house too and she didn't need my permission to stay. I reminded her very clearly that this was my house. I inherited it from my parents, the same one she never stops trash-talking. So I gave her 2 options, either she left on her own, or I'd call the cops and have her escorted out. We argued back and forth for a bit, but eventually, my father-in-law stepped in and made her leave with him. Since then, I've been spending all my time at home, staying close to my wife and doing everything I can to reassure her that everything's going to be okay. That whole ordeal really shook her up. I still can't wrap my head around how a mother could put her own daughter through so much stress and emotional damage, especially when she's pregnant. But that's just the kind of person my mother-in-law is. And as if everything she already did wasn't bad enough, she actually had the nerve to text me yesterday. She demanded I let her move back in so she could take care of my wife. I was livid. I didn't even try to be polite. I told her she'd be lucky if I ever let her near my wife or our baby ever again. After that, I blocked her. But this morning, my phone rang, and to my surprise, it was my father-in-law. He's usually the quiet, keep-to-himself kind of guy, so I was a little caught off guard. He told me I owed my mother-in-law an apology because she'd been sobbing all night. He said she was heartbroken over being separated from her daughter and the soon-to-be grandchild and insisted that she only meant well. So now I'm stuck wondering. AITA for not allowing my mother-in-law to see my wife after everything she did to make her feel ashamed of her body while she was 8 months pregnant? Update 1. Hey everyone, first of all, thank you to every single person who commented on my original post. Reading your stories and seeing your support has truly meant a lot to me. My heart goes out to anyone who's ever had to deal with emotional abuse or body shaming, especially from a parent. I really hope you're able to heal and move on from that pain. No one deserves to carry that kind of trauma. As for us, things have gotten a whole lot better since we decided to go completely no contact with my wife's family. It's been about a week now, and we haven't heard a word from any of them. My wife told me something that broke my heart. She never even wanted them to move in with us. Her mom basically forced her to make it happen. That woman, she's been messing with my wife's head since the beginning of her pregnancy. Every day it was something, nagging her about her weight, criticizing her body, making her feel like she wasn't good enough. I'll admit, I feel guilty that I didn't realize how badly it was affecting her. I was so focused on trying to create a safe and comfortable space for her and the baby that I didn't stop to think about what her mother might be saying behind closed doors. Living with her mom again triggered all those old insecurities. My wife admitted she started to feel awful about her body, and that's what pushed her to do something as extreme and out of character as spying on me. She promised me it won't happen again, and I believe her. But honestly, my main concern now is her mental and emotional well-being. As for the whole situation with her brother and the laptop, I've let it go. I'm not holding that against her anymore. She was scared, overwhelmed, and vulnerable, all thanks to the crap her mother had been feeding her. I told her she can eat whatever she wants, whenever she wants, and it's no one's business but hers. And I meant it. I also told her what I said to her mother when she texted me, and she said I did the right thing. She doesn't want to see her mom ever again either. And you know what? I'm going to make damn sure that doesn't happen. That woman made my wife's life miserable, and if I had known just how cruel she could be, I would have never allowed her into our home in the first place. That was my biggest mistake, but I've learned from it. From now on, if my wife needs help, we're going to turn to actual professionals. Her family isn't an option anymore, not for support, not for childcare, nothing. I'd love to have my own parents involved, but I don't want to bother them unnecessarily. They've built a peaceful life out on the outskirts of the city and they deserve to enjoy it. Still, they promise they'll be here when my wife goes into labor. They're just a 3-hour drive away. For now, I'm working from home, trying to make up for lost time with my wife. She's been through a rough emotional patch, and I'm making sure she's eating well and taking care of herself. I really hope these last few weeks before the baby comes go smoothly. I don't think either of us has the emotional bandwidth to deal with any more surprises. She's due in just a couple of weeks, and all I want is for these final days to be calm, peaceful, and filled with love. Update 2. Just when we thought we were finally free of her, my mother-in-law made her grand reappearance. It's been nearly 10 days since I kicked her out. This morning, my wife and I were woken up by someone pounding on our front door and screaming like a maniac. The second she heard the voice, she froze. It was her mother. Without hesitation, she told me to call the police. So I did. Within half an hour, officers showed up and escorted her off the property. But of course, it didn't end there. Even after the cops had removed her, she kept trying to get to us. She even dragged our next-door neighbor into it. Our neighbor is a single woman in her late 40s, really sweet lady, but it was incredibly awkward for her. Apparently, my mother-in-law had shown up at her door a few minutes later, handed her a folded note, and asked her to give it to us. The note was meant for my wife. In it, her mother told her to leave me and come back to her real family, so she could take care of her. And then she added that she'd be very disappointed if my wife didn't listen. Well, tough luck for her. My wife is a grown adult, and she sure as hell doesn't need to be looked after by someone who's done nothing but drag her down. I didn't even show my wife the note. I crumpled it up and tossed it in the trash where it belonged. She didn't ask about it, and I didn't bring it up. After that, I sat her down and said what we both knew was true: this had gone way too far. It was time to take legal action. She agreed without hesitation. So, we've decided to file for a restraining order against her mother. After everything that's happened, I honestly can't see a future where that woman is still part of our lives. I can't picture anything positive coming from it. Maybe if the rest of her family genuinely apologized, I'd consider opening a door for them in the future. But not her mother. No way. That woman has tormented my wife her whole life, through childhood, her teenage years, and now, even while she's pregnant. I made the mistake of letting her back in once. I won't make it again. Update 3. Hey everyone, coming back here almost a month later with some big news. My wife and I are officially parents to a beautiful baby girl. And let me tell you, we are going to do everything in our power to be better parents than her mother or mine ever were. My wife has already stepped into motherhood like she was born for it. She's amazing with our daughter. And me? I'm doing my best to be the kind of dad this little girl can always count on. Part of that responsibility was making sure my mother-in-law stayed completely out of our lives. We managed to get the restraining order finalized just a few weeks before my wife gave birth. 2 full years legally blocked from contacting or approaching us. When she got served, she went off the rails. She called everyone, my parents, a few mutual friends, one of my wife's cousins, even some distant relatives, basically anyone she thought might talk to my wife on her behalf. But every single one of them already knew what was going on and how toxic things had gotten. To their credit, not a single one tried to contact us about it. They just gave us a heads up that she tried, and that was that. A few weeks after that circus, my wife finally went into labor. It was a long one, almost 18 hours, but at the end of it all, there she was, our baby girl. Seeing her for the first time was surreal. I don't even have the words for it. We cried. We laughed. It was overwhelming in all the best ways. But a few hours after the delivery, I could tell my wife was struggling. She looked heartbroken, not over the baby, but because not a single member of her family had reached out. Nobody had even asked how she was doing leading up to the birth. That kind of hurt runs deep, and I was scared it might trigger postpartum depression. So I got proactive. I reached out to a counselor and convinced her to start therapy. Thankfully, she agreed, and now she's been doing online sessions with someone who really seems to understand what she's going through. I'm hoping it helps her feel less alone and more supported. Outside of that, though, we're having the time of our lives. Our daughter is everything. I know every new parent says that, but I mean it. Just watching her yawn or grip my finger makes everything feel right in the world. And honestly, I see so much of her mom in her already. I hope she grows up to be just as strong, kind, and beautiful as my wife, maybe even stronger. My parents are planning to visit soon. They had to delay a bit since my uncle got sick, but I'm actually kind of glad it worked out this way. These first couple of weeks, just the 3 of us? It's been peaceful. Like we're finally our own little unit. And I've never felt more at home than I do when I'm sitting between my wife and daughter. I don't mean to gush, but it really does feel like we're whole now. Like this is what our family was always meant to be.